Funny how some moments just hit you like a punch in the gut, and you remember every single breath you took. That Thursday morning, standing out on my grandfather's porch, coffee barely cool in my hand, I learned exactly what that meant. You have 30 days to demolish this house, or we'll do it for you. That's what she said. No warning, no kindness, just that shrill practice voice like she delivered the same line to 100 people before me and never expected anyone to talk back. She was wearing a gray suit, looking like she'd been pressed into it by some corporate iron, a tight little smile that didn't touch her eyes. And right there beside her stood a guy in what I swear was almost a cop uniform. Not quite almost. Close enough to scare somebody who wasn't paying attention, but let me tell you, I'd spent 12 years digging through every kind of scam in the book as an investigative journalist. I know a fake when I see one. And that morning I could smell something rotten before they even opened their mouths. See, I didn't come out here to fight. I'd left all that behind, or at least I thought I had. What I wanted was quiet, peace, the kind of silence that presses in on you and fills every space until even your own breathing sounds too loud. But when somebody tries to muscle in on your family's land, flashing fake papers and spitting threats, you don't just pack up and go. Not if you've ever loved something enough to fight for it. So if you're listening right now, wherever you're from, go ahead and drop a comment. Let me know where you're hearing this. Because I promise you, these things happen everywhere. Maybe not on a red porch in the middle of nowhere, but somewhere close to home for someone. Anyway, let me back up a sec. That dawn, the light just breaking through the big pines out front, the paint on the old place caught every ray like it always had. Same stubborn shade of red my grandfather picked out himself back in 1920. The years might have worn it down, but there's a stubbornness in old wood that doesn't wash off easy. That's the smell I remember most. Not just pine and grass, but the sharp, sweet tang of old oak, the kind of timber they don't even cut anymore. Truth is, I wasn't even supposed to be here. Not according to my own plans. I should have been cooped up in some corner office, squinting at monitors, chasing down stories that get a few clicks and then vanish into the static of the news cycle. But 6 months ago, I just walked away. No big speech, no dramatic exit, just done. This house, though, this place was different. 2 acres of land carved out and cared for by hands that actually knew what they were doing. My grandfather, hell, he could measure an angle just by looking at it and come out dead on every single time. He used to say that if you're going to do something, you do it right. Details matter, even the stuff nobody else will ever see. I took that lesson straight into journalism because one wrong detail, one lazy mistake could kill a whole investigation. Now, standing on that porch, running my hand along a rail he'd sanded smooth 50 years ago, I realized I'd carried that same lesson right back home. Bought the place back from a distant cousin, never saw her, never even met her in person. Wire transfer signed, deed done. $340,000, all mine. That deed, locked up in my fireproof safe digital scans in 3 separate clouds. Call me paranoid, but I spent over a decade hunting down forgeries, bad records, and slippery bureaucrats. You don't leave something like that to chance. Before I even made an offer, I ran the deed history back 50 years, every name, every change, every little note. No liens, no easements, no covenants, and most important, no homeowners association. Thank you very much. I'd written enough exposés on HOAs running wild to know I wanted no part of that circus. County records backed me up, black and white stamped and signed. This land was never under any HOA, just my name and nobody else's. First thing I did when I moved in security. 4 cameras, high-def, cloud-backed, covering every angle from the big maple by the drive to the back gate at the edge of the property. I even set up some discreet audio inside, just habit. Journalists do that. Sources always try to backpedal, and you learn quick that proof isn't just a word, it's your insurance policy. Told myself it was just regular home security, but deep down I knew I'd always be documenting. That's just who I am. Restoring the place was a slow burn. Outdated electrical old floorboards scratched raw, that iconic red paint flaking away. But the bones, God, the bones, were strong. My grandfather, he built to last. I spent the first week just walking the perimeter, running my boots along old survey stakes, clearing brush, hacking back overgrowth, piecing together the old map in my mind. There's something about tracing footsteps from decades ago that makes you feel like you're both a ghost and the living all at once. Started a list strip the floor, sand 'em, oil 'em till the grain shines. Tear out that brittle knob and tube wiring, replace it with code-correct copper. Match the paint. Exactly had to dig through the Historical Society's archives to find the right shade, but I got it. Pulled every permit, filed every form, paid every fee. By the book. Every step. Because if I was going to rebuild, I was going to do it right. Evenings, I'd sit out front, coffee cooling in my hand, listening to nothing but wind and birds. No sirens, no neighbors' TVs, no tires screeching at midnight. Just quiet. My grandfather used to rock in the chair that's probably rotting out in the barn, now sip his coffee, watch the sun go down, tell stories about starting over and building something nobody could take away. I kept thinking about that, what it meant to really own something, not a lease, not a mortgage with some bank's name hanging over it, but real, clean, legal ownership, something that stood the test of time. I'd built my whole career on verification, chasing after bad actors, burning the candle at both ends. Marriage didn't survive it, friendships faded. Even my health took a hit. I don't blame my ex-wife for walking out. Hell, I barely remember what it was like to choose anything but work. But now I was just here in this old red house, patching floors and hammering nails, trying to bring something back to life. At night, I'd prop my laptop on the table my grandfather built and fall back into old habits, scanning emails, reading news, sifting through reports from colleagues still out there chasing ghosts. But mostly I'd look at my before photos, the ones I took before swinging a single hammer. I started imagining what the after pictures would look like, not for any publication, just for me. Sometimes I'd flip through the real photo album, the old one, dog-eared, musty, heavy with memory. 1958. There's my grandfather, big grin hammer in hand, that red paint as bright as blood behind him. I wanted to honor that not with some overblown renovation, but with care, patience, every nail set just so, every brush stroke a quiet thank you to the man who built it. The barn, pretty rough shape, but the bones were there too. The well still worked cold and deep, and the septic passed my first sniff test. There was no hurry. That was the whole point, time to breathe, to watch the sun stretch across the porch and the sky turn orange and purple while the coffee turned cold. Silence. Real silence, the kind you don't get in the city, the kind you have to chase down, hunt for earn. Let me tell you, you don't know peace until you've felt old wood settle beneath you and realized it's been standing for 100 years. That's the sort of thing you can't buy. Not really, not in any city, not at any price. Day 5 started like any other, well as any other. As things get when you're learning how to patch a corroded pipe at 8 in the morning and talking to yourself about old times. I was elbow deep under the kitchen sink, hands stinging from some off-brand degreaser, when I heard 3 sharp knocks on the front door, solid, no nonsense, the kind that tells you the person outside expects to be let in. Not the neighborly kind either, more like someone there on business, someone looking to lay down the law. I wiped my hands on a faded shop rag, took a second to glance through the wavy old glass by the door. 2 figures, woman in a suit, man in a uniform. My gut clenched not out of fear but recognition. I'd interviewed enough cops in my time to know a real one from a Halloween rental, and this guy, well, he was all costume and no presence. Navy blue patches on the arms belt, weighed down with gear but no badge number, no name tag, no department embroidery, just a blurred patch that would fool you at a distance maybe if you weren't paying attention. The woman, she looked about 50. Every hair pulled back so tight it probably ached lips set in a practiced smile. She held a leather clipboard like it was the Holy Grail, or maybe the hammer of God. "Mr. Hollister," she said before I even had a chance to get a word in. "I'm Vanessa Kirkland, representing the Homeowners Association for this area. This is Officer Finch. We need to discuss a serious violation." She said it with a kind of bored authority, like she'd rehearsed it, like she expected me to cave the second she mentioned serious violation. But I leaned against the door frame, kept my phone in my pocket, recording app already running Old Habits Die Hard. What homeowners association, I asked, trying to keep my voice even, but I couldn't help the skepticism leaking through. I checked county records before I bought this place. No HOA registered here. She didn't flinch, just pulled out a document, heavy, fancy paper official, formatting everything meant to impress. This is our official bylaws. You're in violation of multiple regulations. The structure must be demolished within 30 days or will be forced to take legal action. She handed it to me like it was some kind of sacred text. I flipped through it, already cataloging the details in my head. Paper was expensive, font was garum, weird choice for legal docs. No notary, no county seal, nothing that would make it real. I'd like to see the documents establishing your legal authority, I said, not raising my voice, not backing down. HOA has to be registered. I need proof your group even exists. Finch, the so-called officer, stepped forward, trying to fill the doorway with his shoulders. We have full enforcement authority, he said, voice just a little too sharp. If you don't comply, we'll initiate eviction proceedings. Everyone cooperates eventually. Yeah, I'd heard that tone before, usually from people trying to intimidate me out of a story. I made a show of pulling out my phone and taking pictures of their bylaws. Vanessa's smile got just a little bit tighter at the corners. Mr. Hollister, this isn't a negotiation. Regulations are clear. You have 30 days. I looked at Finch, met his eyes, and asked, "Can I see your badge or department ID?" He shifted on his feet. That's not necessary in this situation. Any real cop would have shown it before I even had to ask. Standard. This guy was bluffing. I'm going to need documentation that your HOA is registered with the county, I said, and proof of your enforcement authority. Vanessa's mask slipped for a second. Mr. Hollister, I understand you're new here, but these rules are for everyone's benefit. We're simply asking you to comply. Asking, she said. That was rich. Appreciate you stopping by, I replied. But I'm not taking action until I verify the legal standing of your group. If you want to provide registered documents from the county recorder's office, I'll be happy to look. I handed the bylaws back. She refused to take them. Keep the copy. You'll need it for enforcement. Finch dropped a business card on the porch railing. No address, just a phone number and a P.O. box. Another red flag. Then they turned, got in a plain black sedan, no plates, no markings, just another car, and drove off. I stood there listening to the engine fade, feeling the wind bite at my skin. Then I went inside, set everything out on the kitchen table. My grandfather's old table, the one with the deep scratches from decades of family dinners, and uploaded the phone recording to cloud storage. I sat down with my laptop, opened up the county recorder's website, and started digging. Deeds, covenants, HOA registrations, nothing. Search the neighboring areas just in case. Nothing. Check the state's corporation database for Kirkland 3 LLCs, all registered to residential addresses, all with purposely vague descriptions like community services and property management. Screenshotted everything, organized it into neat little folders, evidence, chain of custody. The years hadn't dulled those old journalist instincts. Then I looked at the bylaws in detail. Margins were perfect, but the font, the logo, blurry like a bad copy-paste from Google Images. No watermark, no seal, no official stamps. Someone wanted it to look professional, but the minute you really looked, it fell apart. That business card Finch left cheap cardstock phone number led to nothing. A P.O. box, no trace of any actual agency. Everything about this screamed scam. And there it was, that old familiar tug in my chest. The thing that kept me up late all those years. Something just didn't add up and I couldn't let it go. I'd come here to escape that, but now it was at my door dragging me back in. So I opened a new document and started a timeline. Thursday, 9:00 a.m. First contact. Alleged HOA rep Vanessa Kirkland. Alleged officer Garrett Finch. Claims made, documents provided, red flags identified. Next steps. Facts, sources, verification needed. And then right on cue, an email from Vanessa, Mr. Hollister. This is your final courtesy notice. Failure to comply with HOA regulations will result in legal action. We strongly encourage you to reconsider your position. I archived it, screenshotted the headers, replied Miss Kirkland. I'll see you in court. No fear, just the cold steel of certainty. I'd been up against nastier operators than her, but something about this felt personal. Maybe because it was my land this time. Maybe because I could see how a regular person, someone without my background, would just fold. Monday. I was up before dawn in line at the county office before the doors even opened. I could smell the government building before I even saw it, old brick floor polish and years of coffee breath in the air. The clerk, middle-aged, reading glasses on a chain voice, already tired at 8:30, didn't blink at my request for every record on my property going back 50 years. "Give me about 20 minutes," she said. So I set up shop in the plastic chairs, laptop open, spreadsheet, already halfway filled out date doc type source notes. That's how you stay sane as an investigator, track everything, lose nothing. She handed over a stack of documents thick enough to flatten a squirrel, and I paid for certified copies plus a notarized statement that there was no HOA registration for my address. "Someone claiming you're in an HOA?" she asked, eyebrow raised. "Someone's claiming a lot of things I said." She stamped everything. Good luck. Back home, I spread those records all over the kitchen table. No gaps, no phantom covenants, just a clean line of ownership. From my grandfather to me. Scanned everything, uploaded to the cloud, multiple copies always. And then I started digging for backgrounds. Vanessa Kirkland. 3 failed LLCs, a bankruptcy, a handful of lawsuits for breach of contract, a long career in real estate with more complaints than 5 normal agents put together. Nothing outright criminal, but a pattern aggressive, manipulative, skirting the edge of the rules. Found a post on a real estate forum, someone describing her using the same hard sell tactics. Not proof, but it matched her style. Garrett Finch. No law enforcement record in the state system. Dig a little deeper, and there it is, terminated from a sheriff's department in 2019. Excessive force, lost his certification. Couldn't legally work as a cop anymore, but it's not hard to buy a uniform online. I documented everything, filed it, labeled it, attached screenshots and metadata, building a case as strong as any I'd ever put together for print. By the time I finished, I had a 37-page file. Sent it to the state attorney general, county sheriff, and the real estate licensing board, all with confirmation receipts and backup copies. This wasn't just about saving my house. This was prosecution. Vanessa had picked the wrong target, but I didn't stop there. Called an old friend, a private investigator, someone I'd saved from a very bad spot years back. Gave him the names, paid his rate, told him to find every time these two had pulled this scam before. Meanwhile, I added 2 more cameras, hidden this time, aimed at the drive and side yard. Call it paranoia if you want, but where I come from, that's just good sense. And the truth is, I wasn't scared. Not even angry, really. I was focused, razor sharp, the way I'd been when chasing stories about city officials siphoning millions or cops covering up shootings. The only difference was this time the story was mine. That's when the real pressure started. 12 days after that first knock, I woke up early, habit, I guess. Brewed some coffee, stepped onto the porch to check the camera feeds, and there it was. A bright yellow paper, taped right where I'd have to see it. All caps, bold black type, violation notice. Unauthorized construction. Immediate cease and desist required. Looked official if you didn't have much experience with the real thing. But there was one detail that broke the whole illusion. The header said Springfield County, but I lived in Riverside County. It's the kind of mistake people make when they grab a template off the internet and don't bother to double-check the details. I peeled it off, carefully snapped photos from every angle, kept the tape and all evidence. Old habits. The paper was just cheap printer stock, nothing special. The seal at the top, a generic pixelated county crest, was clearly downloaded. I'd seen enough government forms to know how a real one feels in your hand. This was not it. I went inside, scanned it, added it to the growing evidence folder, right on the timeline. Day 12 escalation, fake legal notice, attempted intimidation. I could almost admire the play. It was smart. Most people would panic at an official-looking document on their door, maybe call the number, maybe just give up. But most people hadn't made a career out of sniffing out fake paperwork and bad actors. 2 days later, my phone rang. County Code Enforcement Office. The voice on the line sounded as exhausted as I felt. Mr. Hollister, we received a report that you're conducting unpermitted construction at your property. I'd been expecting this. All my permits are filed and approved. Would you like copies? Pause keyboard clacking in the background. Yes, please. We need to verify. I sent over every document building electrical stamped and signed. 10 minutes later, she called back. Everything checks out. The complaint was false. Sorry for the trouble. I asked, is this the first time you've had a complaint from this person? Longer pause. I can't really share that information. But between you and me, no, it's not. That was all I needed. Vanessa had a pattern using government agencies like bludgeons filing bogus reports to make people dance. A few days later, it got pettier. Flyers all up and down the street, crisp white sheets stuffed into mailboxes and tucked under doors. I snagged one, warning to residents new homeowner refuses to comply with safety regulations. Property values at risk. Signed by the so-called Riverside Community Management Association. Vague threats, lots of implication, nothing you could actually get sued for. Didn't say my name, but everyone knew who they meant. I was the only new guy on the block. The quality, same cheap printer, same tone, same nonsense as before. I collected 3 noted which houses got them snapped photos for the record. That's when the subtle stuff started. Neighbors who'd wave or say good morning suddenly crossed the street. One couple I'd had coffee with turned away pretending to tie their dog's leash just to avoid meeting my eyes. Social isolation textbook tactic. Make the target feel alone, make it seem like the whole world is quietly shutting them out. I could almost hear Vanessa's strategy, squeeze the target until they either fold or flee, but I'd lived through worse. I'd worked cases where my own sources ghosted me, where nobody believed what I was chasing. I knew how to be alone. What I didn't know yet was who might be willing to stand with me. So I decided to find out. Started across the street, old-fashioned style, a plate of store-bought cookies in hand. The woman who answered Miss Brennan looked me over with a frown until I introduced myself as Graham Hollister, grandson of the man who built the red house. Something softened in her face. She let me in. Her place was cozy, old photos everywhere, grandchildren lined up on the mantel. We sat in her neat living room and I laid it out the fake HOA, the threats, Vanessa and her sidekick. She listened silent, then finally said, "That woman came to me too about 2 years back. Told me I was in violation, wanted me to sell. My son's a lawyer. He told her to take a hike." She left. "Would you be willing to write that down? Make a statement." She nodded, "If it helps." "Your grandfather would have hated a bully." So I left with her handwritten account, another piece of the puzzle. That week, I knocked on more doors than I had in my whole life. Most neighbors were wary, thanks to those flyers. But when I showed them real evidence, certified records, fake documents, the background on Vanessa and Finch, they opened up. 2 had been approached by Vanessa before. One had sold after months of hell. "She wore me down," he said, bitterness in his voice. Sold for $180,000 place, was worth double. Lost my retirement. I just wanted peace. I started keeping a list. Recorded interviews, written statements, victims, real people, not just names. 4 so far, just in our little patch. The pattern was clear as day. Target folks who didn't know the system, lean on them till they broke. Rinse, repeat, profit. And as I pulled the numbers together, it hit me. This wasn't just a nasty trick. This was organized crime. 4 neighbors, $200,000 each, $800,000 stolen right under everyone's noses. If she'd done it elsewhere, the total could be in the millions. This was a full-blown scam with receipts. That night, a text came through, no ID, just, "You don't know who you're messing with. Stop now before it's too late." I screenshot it, logged the metadata, and sent it to my lawyer. Then I replied, "Every threat you make is more evidence. Please keep going." And the truth was, I wanted them to keep going. Every desperate move made my case stronger. They thought they were making me sweat, but they were handing me the rope. Sitting at my grandfather's table under those red walls, I realized something had changed. This wasn't about my silence, my peace, not anymore. Vanessa and Finch had hurt real people, stolen from them, bullied them, made them feel powerless. They'd counted on nobody fighting back. But I could fight. I had the know-how, the patience, the old reporter's hunger for the truth. And suddenly the silence I'd come here for didn't matter so much. Some fights you just have to pick up. On the 22nd day since their first threat, I knew it was time to take this public. Sunlight slanting through the kitchen windows, stacks of files and coffee rings on my grandfather's old table, I realized I'd hit my limit. I could keep documenting and reporting, but Vanessa had been playing this game for years. She was patient, methodical. She'd wait me out if I let her grind me down with small jabs, drag things out until I made a mistake or simply gave up. But there was one weapon I had that she didn't expect: publicity. So you can play a lot of tricks in the shadows, but once you drag a scam into the light, folks start paying attention. Sunlight's the best disinfectant, my editor used to say. I'd spent years turning complicated hidden messes into front-page news. Now I'd use that same skill to protect my home. First, I picked up the phone and called an old friend, a reporter named Emma I'd mentored back when she was still finding her feet in the business. She owed me more than a few favors. "Emma, I've got a story for you," I said, cutting right to the chase. "Real estate fraud. Fake HOA, fake cop, multiple victims. Probably over $1 million scammed. I've got all the receipts, documents, interviews, photos, timelines." There was a moment of silence. Then, how solid. I grinned, feeling the old energy in my veins. 40 pages of hard evidence, victim statements, certified public records, background checks. It's airtight. She agreed to meet the next afternoon. That night, I reorganized my entire case into a presentation: timelines, document comparisons, victim statements, surveillance photos, video clips of Finch in his fake uniform, audio of Vanessa's threats. Everything. Like building an expose, only this time the target wasn't a crooked mayor or a shady developer. It was a couple of predators who'd been hiding in plain sight. When Emma showed up, we took 2 hours going through the evidence. She scribbled notes, asked sharp questions, asked for digital copies of everything. "Give me 4 days to verify," she said. "If this checks out, it's front page." While Emma got to work, I made my next move, posted my story on a legal advice forum. Not social media, too much noise there, too easy to lose control. I laid out the facts, no names or addresses, just the outline of the scam evidence, questions about next steps, uploaded photos of the fake documents with identifying info redacted, posted audio of the threats. No drama, just facts. I wanted lawyers, experts, and maybe other victims. The response was fast and overwhelming. Within 6 hours, the post had over 15,000 views. Attorneys weighed in, folks shared similar stories. 3 people messaged me directly, 2 from neighboring counties, both naming Vanessa Kirkland and Garrett Finch, both describing the same tactics: intimidation, fake legal papers, threats. I added their stories to my case file, growing more certain that this wasn't just a local scam. It was regional, maybe statewide. On day 25, I filed formal complaints with the Attorney General, the county sheriff, and the state real estate board, each one dozens of pages thick, each with certified delivery and tracking numbers. I was building a record they couldn't ignore. That afternoon, Vanessa called me. This time the confidence was gone. Her voice was tight, forced. "Mr. Hollister, what do you think you're doing?" I put her on speaker, pressed record. "I'm protecting my rights and reporting what appears to be organized fraud." She tried to backpedal, said it was all a misunderstanding, offered to settle, which coming from her was as good as an admission of guilt. I pushed her, asked how many people she'd done this to. She went silent, then snapped that I was making serious accusations. "No," I said, "I'm making documented statements. There's a difference." She hung up. I logged the call, saved the file. Consciousness of guilt, prosecutors call that. 4 days later, Emma called back. "It's bigger than I thought. Independent verification, victim interviews, state offices won't comment, but they're looking into it. We're running the story tomorrow, front page." And she did. Banner headline: "Fake HOA scheme targets homeowners in 3 counties. Photos, charts, witness quotes, side-by-side images showing the differences between real and fake documents, the works. My story was laid out, along with those of other victims. By noon, my phone was blowing up. 3 local news stations wanted interviews. 2 more victims came forward. A real estate lawyer offered his services. Neighbors who'd been avoiding me knocked on my door to apologize. They hadn't realized what was going on, hadn't wanted to believe it. One of the elderly women on my block asked if we could organize a meeting. She wanted the whole neighborhood to understand their rights. I agreed, of course. That night I stood on the porch looking out over my grandfather's land. The silence felt different, full, not empty. There was a kind of solidarity I hadn't expected, and a feeling that maybe for the first time since I moved back, this place could be a real home again. A few days later, an idea came to me while I was thumbing through state statutes. I'd spent so long proving Vanessa's HOA didn't exist. It never occurred to me that maybe, just maybe, the best defense was to create a real one. A legitimate registered HOA set up to protect folks from the very scam she'd pulled. I spent the next week drafting bylaws, simple, transparent, no nonsense. No forced paint colors, no landscaping rules, no power to take anyone's house. Just a way to pool money for road repairs, snow removal, shared utilities, and keep out scammers like Vanessa for good. I needed signatures from at least 15 households. Turned out, after all that had happened, people were eager. By day 34, I had 22 signatures. I filed the paperwork, paid the fees, and while I waited for approval, I set to work on a new legal complaint. Civil action seeking $500,000 in damages for fraud, harassment, and emotional distress. The state came through faster than expected. Within a week, our HOA was registered, bylaws, certified officers elected me as president, unanimous, though I offered to let someone else do it. The elderly neighbor as secretary, a retired teacher as treasurer. We passed our first motion. This HOA exists to protect homeowners' rights, not to take them away. The next morning, I sent a certified letter to Vanessa, printed on official HOA letterhead, notifying her that any further harassment would be met with immediate legal action. For good measure, I copied the letter to the Attorney General's office and the sheriff. 2 days later, my PI called. He'd uncovered more than I'd imagined. Vanessa had run this scam in at least 3 counties under different shell companies with Finch as her muscle. 13 confirmed victims, over $1.4 million lost. His report was 40 pages long, including corporate filings, fake documents, victim interviews. I attached it to my now 87-page complaint and filed suit, served Vanessa and Finch through a process server. Within a week, Vanessa's lawyer fired back with a cease and desist letter threatening me with defamation. I sent my own reply. Every claim is supported by sworn testimony, public records, and certified evidence. I welcome the opportunity to present it in court. 3 days after that, I got the letter. I'd been waiting for the Attorney General's office, had opened a formal investigation. A state investigator wanted to interview me, review my files, and collect evidence. It was official now. Vanessa wasn't just facing a civil suit, she was staring down criminal charges. Finch caved first. Word came from a prosecutor I knew he'd flipped, offering emails, financial records, everything in exchange for leniency. He was ready to testify against Vanessa. Sitting at my grandfather's table, binder after binder stacked high, I felt not peace exactly, but something like relief. The story was out in the world. The wheels were turning. Maybe, just maybe, the system was working the way it was supposed to. The court date was set. I had months to prepare. But I'd already built my case carefully, slowly, the way my grandfather taught me. Measure twice, cut once. Now all I had to do was see it through. I'm not sure anyone ever really sleeps the night before a courtroom showdown. At least not when it's your own life on the line. By the time the sun crested the trees out front, I'd been up for hours pacing the floors, double-checking my binders, triple-checking the backup files, running through every possible question in my mind. My consulting attorney, friend of a friend, good with procedure, met me outside the courthouse, handed me a cup of diner coffee, and gave me that look only someone who spent decades in the legal trenches can give. "You'll do fine," she said. "Just stick to the truth. Judges like that." The courthouse was all old wood and high ceilings, as if the place itself had been built to make you stand up straight and remember you're part of something bigger. I got there early, 45 minutes early, just like every good reporter or defendant does. The place was almost empty, except for a bailiff humming a country tune under his breath, and a couple of neighbors from my street sitting on the back bench with arms folded, faces tense, but hopeful. When Judge Elena Thorne walked in, you could feel the whole room snap to attention. She didn't waste time. This is a preliminary hearing in the matter of Hollister versus Kirkland and Finch. She said, her voice even and deliberate. Mr. Hollister, you're representing yourself. I stood my hands flat on the table to keep them from shaking. Yes, Your Honor, I have consulting counsel for procedure only. She nodded. Proceed with your opening statement. 12 years in journalism teaches you to get to the point without losing the thread. Your Honor, this is about systematic fraud disguised as authority. The defendants created a fake homeowners association, forged documents, and used a man impersonating an officer to coerce property owners into selling for less than market value. I have documented evidence of at least 13 victims and losses of over $1.4 million. I was their next target, but I documented everything, and the evidence will show they engaged in intentional, organized fraud. I connected my laptop to the court's display system, heart pounding. 50 slides, clean and methodical timeline at the top, exhibits below. First, the property deed, my name, clean title, no HOA, and the history going back to 1923. Next, the bylaws Vanessa handed me side by side with real county documents pointing out the odd font, the lack of seals or notary, the blurry, low-resolution logo. See, Your Honor, it looks real until you actually look. Then the video Finch in his almost official uniform approaching my porch making threats. His face a mask of confidence that in retrospect was all for show. Audio played through the speakers. Vanessa's voice icy and crisp. You have 30 days to demolish this house or we'll do it for you. More documents, the fake violation notice with the wrong county name, the flyers in mailboxes, the business card with nothing but a P.O. box and burner number. My voice didn't waver. I'd told hundreds of stories to strangers. Telling my own was harder than I'd imagined. One by one, the witnesses stepped up. Miss Brennan, my neighbor, her hands steady as she described Vanessa's pressure 2 years earlier, how she called her son a lawyer and made the problem go away. The retired teacher, voice trembling, told of the relentless harassment, the sale he regretted every day. I lost my home and my retirement, he said, blinking back tears. All I wanted was peace. Then Finch, looking smaller than the man who'd stood on my porch. He'd already agreed to testify in exchange for leniency. Vanessa Kirkland hired me. She gave me the uniform. She paid me $500 each visit. I knew it wasn't legal, but I needed money. I'm sorry. The words fell flat, rehearsed, but it was what the judge needed to hear. The forensic document expert, a calm older woman with a professorial air, testified that all the documents were fakes pieced together with free desktop publishing software. Seals or digital signatures are forged or missing. The documents wouldn't pass a basic authentication check. They are, in my professional opinion, intentionally fraudulent. Vanessa's attorney, a sharp-suited man with a habit of drumming his fingers, tried to rattle me on cross-examination. You're a journalist, Mr. Hollister. Isn't it true you're just doing this for attention, trying to rebuild your career? I let the accusation sit for a second. I retired to find peace, not headlines. But when someone tries to steal what's yours with fake authority, you either give up or you fight back. I chose to fight so that nobody else would have to. He pressed on. And after all this, you started your own HOA. Isn't that just retaliation? It's protection, I answered calm. A legitimate, transparent HOA means nobody can do what these defendants did again. We followed every law, elected officers published all records. Everything above board, that's the difference. He shook his head. You're asking for $500,000 in damages. I looked to the judge, straightening my back. That figure covers actual losses for 13 victims and punitive damages to deter future fraud. I'm not just here for myself. I'm here because most people don't have the resources to fight back. My last exhibit was an email from Vanessa to an associate recovered by my PI, targeting an elderly widow on Maple Street, outlining profits instructions for standard protocol. It was dated 3 weeks before Vanessa ever stepped on my porch. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the old clock ticking. Judge Thorne reviewed her notes, then looked up. I've heard enough for a preliminary ruling. The evidence presented shows clear indicators of systematic fraud, conspiracy, and intentional interference with property rights. I'm granting a preliminary injunction. Defendants are prohibited from contacting any property owners in these counties, and I'm referring this to the District Attorney for criminal review. The civil trial will proceed. I strongly recommend the defendants consider settlement. Vanessa's face went pale. Her attorney scribbled furiously. The neighbors in the gallery began to whisper, some even smiling through their tears. As I packed up Emma, my reporter friend asked for a comment. "Justice takes time," I said, "but it works if you have evidence and patience." Outside, I watched Vanessa hurry away, ducking the cameras. Finch lingered in the hallway, shoulders sagging before finally disappearing into the parking lot. And there I was standing in the sun, feeling the closest thing to peace I'd felt in years. Not because the fight was over, but because I'd finally stood my ground and seen the truth come out. 5 months later, after more court dates and more headaches, the verdict came in: Vanessa Kirkland guilty, 4 counts of wire fraud, 3 of conspiracy, 2 of impersonation, 1 of extortion. The jury needed just 6 hours. She was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, 5 years of supervised release, over $2 million in restitution. Her real estate licenses were gone forever. Finch got off easier probation and community service. The judge was stern. "You wore a uniform you didn't earn. You made good people feel unsafe in their own homes." He was ordered to speak to youth groups about consequences. The settlement followed. Vanessa's assets were liquidated, every cent divided among her victims. My retired teacher neighbor got his savings back. Other families got closure. I got $75,000, more than enough to finish restoring the house. A good chunk I donated to a legal aid fund for elderly homeowners. The rest, plumbing a new roof, a final coat of that stubborn red paint. The legitimate HOA went on quietly, the way it should be: transparent, boring, just neighbors looking out for one another. Other neighborhoods reached out, asked for our bylaws. We shared them gladly. 6 months after the verdict, I found myself standing on that porch again, mug of coffee, warming my hands. The house shining in the morning sun. Floors polished, windows bright, every room echoing with new life. The neighborhood was different now, not just in the way people waved and chatted, but in the trust that had returned. We'd been through hell, but we'd come out on the other side. Sometimes I reread the letters I got from other victims, people I'd never met, thanking me for standing up, for making them believe that justice could still be found. I keep those letters in the old photo album right next to the black and white shot of my grandfather grinning in front of a house that somehow still stood. Most days I spend in the barn out back, turning old wood into something useful. Bookshelves, a table, nothing fancy but built right. Evenings I watch the sun go down and listen to the house settle, the wood creaking softly, like it's finally found its place. There are days when I miss the old noise, the adrenaline, the chase. But I've come to love this quieter life, these moments of hard-won peace. Because silence, when you've earned it, is more than just the absence of sound. It's proof you stood your ground, that you protected something worth saving. And every so often, when I look at that old red paint, I hear my grandfather's voice: "Measure twice, cut once." And I know for the first time in a long time that I got it right.